I kid you not, 15 minutes after I posted a tweet about this script, Twitch came out with a clarification tweet, so I'm gonna work that into this, but you cannot imagine my frustration. Streaming is something that many use as a form of escapism from their day-to-day life. After all, watching someone you like can really help take your mind off of things. Maybe you're able to forget the stresses of your life while watching your favorite person do their nails, watching a stranger cook a meal, or even while watching an anime avatar fail at games. Ultimately, streaming is a way to find fun, camaraderie, and a community of like-minded people for streamers and viewers alike. Of course, streaming has its own issues and problem children, just like any other form of media out there, from the users on the platform to the stream hosting sites themselves. Twitch.tv is one such website that many call home when it comes to their streaming habits. It is one of the biggest platforms out there, with roughly 35 million active users on any given day. However, it seems that those pulling the site's strings seem more and more intent on doing whatever they can to ruin their own reputation and social standing among their user base. From issues of penalizing VTubers at an obviously heightened rate compared to FleshTubers, to even shadow banning signups from users located in warring countries, it starts to feel like the CEO is trying to see just how unbearable the platform can become before it entirely crumbles. Now, with the newest content policy updates, that assumption only feels all the more realistic to a large portion of the Twitch streaming community. So, how has Twitch once again angered its user base? Is the anger justified? And how can you make your voice heard by the platform? Hey hi-ya-ho-ya out there to all my big brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, and, of course, mommies, daddies, siblings, and guardians. It's me, your bite-sized baddie and favorite little brother Mark. Perhaps like a spooky curse or even a haunting horror, between All Hallows Eve and the 1st of November, Twitch released an update to their platform content classification guidelines by adding an entirely new section titled Politics and Sensitive Social Issues. This new segment of guidelines opens with the following excerpt. Twitch is a place for people to express themselves and discuss the world around them. We require streams to be labeled when the focus of the stream includes discussions and debates about political or sensitive social issues, such as discussions about elections, civic integrity, war or military conflict, and civil rights. Now, at a base level, many are not opposed to that kind of rule. Especially with 2024 being an election year in the USA, people can get very adamant with their proselytizing when it comes to their chosen candidate. And if someone's gaming stream turns into a pro-Trump or pro-Harris campaign ad from some rando on the internet part of the way through, many potential watchers would likely want to be warned. It's hard enough to escape political ads on TV and even YouTube. Many do not want to have to sit through them on their funny haha streamer time, especially if they don't even live in the United States and can do nothing with the election at hand. However, that's not really the main issue these new guidelines bring up, and it's not the problem most are focusing on with this new section. The true issue comes in how vague the descriptions are and the conflation of very different subject matters as being of the same severity. Most specifically, many are upset that LGBTQ+ rights were mentioned whatsoever in the section under the list of examples of content that would require a classification label. The very last bullet point, after listing activities such as live streams of protests, rallies, or civil unrest, and discussing ideological or socio-political views on topics like gender, race, sexuality, or religion, lists discussing legislation related to sensitive social issues such as reproductive rights, LGBTQ+ rights, or immigration as a no-go topic that would need this new content filter. You may wonder, why would that even be an issue? And this is about the discussion of legislation, not the mere existence of queer people. Setting aside the fact that it should not be controversial to say LGBTQ people deserve rights and to be treated like humans, and ignoring the fact that it lists the mere discussion of ideologies, something that could easily be argued to be just talking about yourself being a queer person, the main issue is in people being scared of Twitch's observably lackluster ability to properly classify things. Earlier, I mentioned that VTubers are more heavily monitored and penalized on the platform. If you're not familiar with or submerged in that internet microcosm, you might not understand just how bad things have gotten for them over the past year or so. So, let me make it clear. It has been alleged by larger VTubers with Twitch reps that there is a different and more strict set of secret guidelines applied to VTubers that IRL streamers do not have to worry about. And there's an even stricter set of rules that VTubers with petite models that could be considered lowlies are also held to. I call these secret not because they're unknown. This rule set was joked about and alleged for a long time before it was all but confirmed by some company emails. They are secret because these guidelines are not only not publicly available anywhere, but when being cited for a reason a VTuber earned a ban on stream, they were told by their rep that they could and would not be sent these guidelines to abide by so that they could prevent getting another strike in the future. Currently, there is a push for more transparency from Twitch, but that does not resolve all of the issues. Even if a clip of whatever offending content that gets a VTuber banned or suspended is shared with them, it can take a great deal of public backlash for an unfair ruling to be overturned. Like in the case of VTuber Fallen Shadow, aka Shondo, a grown woman with a petite avatar to represent the fact that IRL she's a very diminutive woman who was suspended for drinking on stream with the youth risky and self-harm reasonings listed, even though her stream was listed as having mature themes, and even though she has her 18+ status listed. Now, lowly and shota models are all but banned for adults because if Twitch decides you look like a child and do something too mature as laid out in their content guidelines, you're just done. And listen, I am not here to argue for or against lowly content. What I am here to say is that I know many people who use a VTuber model to represent themselves, meaning I know a lot of short women who are VTubers that would be at risk for the sin of acting like the adult they are on stream. Oh, sorry, you're a 5'1" woman who chooses to use a VTuber avatar for privacy's sake but still want to be true to yourself by having a model that is basically a cartoon version of you? Yeah. If you make a single joke about having adult fun times with your husband, you're gonna get suspended for being child-coded. When Twitch moderators get to decide, oh, well, I personally think your model looks like a child, so that's a lowly, and you're being inappropriate and sexual with a lowly model, so you're getting a suspension? That's a big issue. I've known people who see any anime character and say they look like a child because of standard anime facial proportions, no matter how tall they are or if they're the most breasted boobily woman there is. I honestly thought that discourse was left behind in my Tumblr roleplay blog days where people could start accusing one another of kitty diddling because their male OC is child-coded for, like, crying a bit too much while being short. To this specific issue, a lot of people say, why not just make your VTuber model taller? Why are you presenting yourself as tiny when you could avoid the risk by using a taller and more mature model? And that response brings us back to the matter at hand. Well, if you don't want to risk being punished for talking about the struggles of being queer, why not just pretend to be straight? You're choosing to put yourself in the line of fire with Twitch's new guidelines by talking about being LGBTQ. Just go back in the closet. Of course, that is an asinine and horrible thing to suggest, and it is the same principle. You should not have to change how you present yourself for your own safety or the safety of your livelihood. Just like how my shorties can't just change the fact that they are minuscule IRL to avoid being treated like a child IRL, because I know that happens quite a lot to anyone 5 foot and under. We cannot change the fact that we're queer just to avoid being suspended or penalized. Many streamers, not just VTubers, worry that the enforcement of the ideology and LGBTQ rights rulings would be as slapdash and easily taken advantage of as other guideline enforcement on Twitch. I will admit that a lot of what I'm seeing on Twitter seems to just be fear-mongering and spreading FUD. You know, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but I can't say that all of those fears are entirely unfounded. If someone on the moderation staff is a secret homophobe, a la Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name of lyric, some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses, then with the open-ended way the new guidelines are written, how does a streamer know the limit? When someone's existence is labeled as political, it becomes a free pass to discriminate against and silence them. If a trans person discusses their fear of using a public restroom due to the support for bans in nearby states, will they get in trouble for not having a proper political content label? Or does there have to be a certain amount of discussion for it to be counted? The guidelines state intermittent mentions of politics, politicians, or sensitive social issues are not required to have the politics and sensitive social issues label, but again, how much discussion is intermittent and how much is too much? Twitch also said that they will be issuing warnings for when a streamer has broken these guidelines, and after a number of warnings, will automatically assign the political discussion label to all of the streamer's streams for a time being. But is that just meant to be a trial and error period? How much discussion of just living as a queer person is allowed before it counts as discussing ideologies of gender and sexuality? No, you and my existence as queer individuals is not in itself any more political than a heterosexual person's. However, in a time where so many in positions of power are trying to dictate the opposite with things like the colloquially known Don't Say Gay bill that would make a man saying my husband a big no-no, one has to wonder. Now, in my personal opinion, I do not believe that just saying, man, I love women, when you're a woman will get you into trouble. I don't even think saying, I was harangued at the club last night when I rejected someone's advances because I'm queer and not interested in them will get you into trouble either. But I do think that limiting anyone's ability to discuss the world around them is a dangerous and slippery slope to start down. Sure, this may also penalize people who would say incredibly bigoted things, like what happened with Asmongold a while ago, or even people who would try to spread fake news, such as the case of Alex Jones saying the Sandy Hook massacre was a hoax. But you unfortunately have to think a bit deeper when it comes to situations like this. If someone who is currently living in a war zone talks about how difficult it is to leave their home for fear of their life, as we saw from many Ukrainian creators in the past year, could that result in them being punished or censored for not labeling their life as politically sensitive? Is it right to force someone who has to live through events that our grandchildren will read about in their 7th grade history textbooks to add what's basically a content warning for others' comfort to their life that they have no choice but to live through? When the escapism of streaming becomes something so heavily moderated that the people who truly need the distraction from the terrors of the world around them can no longer use it, then what's the point? What's left other than sunshine, rainbows, and sanitization? If you want another take on this content guidelines update, I'd suggest checking out YukoEX's video on the subject. She goes a bit more in depth and shares her feelings on the matter in a really productive way. And if you agree that these guidelines are too vague and are ultimately reductive, there is a way to make Twitch hear you. Twitch has this little-known system called User Voice, where you can make suggestions for the platform and vote on them. This is made by Twitch, not some disconnected change.org thing. Unfortunately, Twitch does not usually publicize the site's existence. Who knows why? Perhaps for the same reason Disney puts its most diverse content out in the historically worst-performing times, only to later say it's a failure on the story and the animators' part, and that audiences don't want new and innovative content. After all, if the audience doesn't know about something, then they can't offer their opinion on it. As of writing this, the suggestion to remove the sensitive social issues bullet point has 37k votes. But that may not be enough to really get a large platform like Twitch to take action. Editing Mark here to say that evidently that was enough, so go us. Yay. To quote the User Voice suggestion, the notion that the discussion of LGBTQ people's very existence is political is absolute nonsense. These people should be allowed to discuss the issues affecting them without being set behind some kind of explicit content label. This is a slippery slope that begins with people automatically labeling non-heteronormative lives and content as deviant or degenerate, especially by grossly bad actors who want to be edgy. And yeah, not only is this a danger to queer people on the platform, but this is the kind of thing that sets a whole landslide of bad into motion. First, they lock the most easily scapegoated people behind content warnings and penalize them until they can't stand to remain on a platform. Then, Who knows? People who aren't seen as physically attractive enough may be next on the list of lives that are controversial. After all, how triggering must it be to an audience to see someone with a disability or physical malady? Why not lock them behind an inappropriate content label too? Just like the ye olden internet discourse of, your car accident scars are upsetting to me. You need to tag all of your selfies and every other picture of you as body horror, so I can choose not to see you. Alright, so after I submitted this on Patreon, I noticed an email alert that Twitch had closed the suggestion and given an update. Yippee! The update says, you don't need to label your stream with the new Politics and Sensitive Issues CCL if you're sharing your lived experience, intermittent mentions of politics, politicians, or sensitive social issues with the new label. We apologize for not communicating this initially. If you are an LGBTQ+ streamer, for example, you do not need this label when talking about your lived experiences as a member of the LGBTQ+ community. We've added clarifying language to the content classification guidelines to better express this. Now, while clarification is good, this does not actually alleviate worries as much as I and many others in the announcement tweets replies would like. Having your own personal experiences be exempt from this rule is good to know, but that does create an entirely new set of questions. How far does that extend? Is it really only for your personal experiences when it comes to race, gender, sexuality, reproductive health, and religion? And who decides the limit of what personal experiences even are? If a woman is discussing her own worries on new legislation surrounding abortion, for example, is that her personal lived experience? Is the apprehension she has a valid enough personal experience, or would she be penalized? There's also a mention within the Zeet that the sensitive discussion must be the main subject of the stream, but that also opens up the door for ambiguity. If you're playing a game of Dark Souls while also talking about your political views, is the gameplay the focus? Or is the commentary between furious outbursts of dying to Anhydrous the Acid the center? Who has the ultimate say on it, and would their game stream be tagged as this, even if it was decided that that's not the main focus? Unfortunately, the issue I proposed of a moderator with a chip on their shoulder, or even mass reporting someone for breaking the LGBTQ+ rights rule if someone is discussing their lived experience as a queer person living anywhere right now, having their life debated by the government, still stands. In the end, why even bother moderating something some of the time, but not actually upholding that moderation if it comes to personal experience? Either the subject matter is severe enough that it needs to be censored and tagged, or it's not. This ambiguity and wishy-washy upholding and enforcement of rules is the entire reason people took issue in the first place. While it's nice that Twitch has made these clarifications in what seems to be an attempt to satiate the anger of the queers, these changes only go to show how unnecessary and unstable these new guidelines ultimately are. So, sign into Twitch and vote for whatever you feel is right. There are more suggestions on User Voice to vote for than just this one, so do not hesitate to make your voice heard. And while you're there, maybe follow me on my Twitch channel. I do discussions like this while drawing, play video games, and do as much voice acting nonsense as I can. It would be nice to see you and hear your thoughts and chat. Or, I get it, if you'd rather stay on YouTube, use our word of the day, Barry, in a comment to let me know that you're a real one and made it to the end of the video. I'm reserving comment hearts only for ones that have it. I appreciate you for making it to the end, just like I appreciate my yummy nummy Patreon supporters. At our brother, sibling, sister tier, we have Viri, Miss Mercuriel, Inside Chaos, and BoxKit. At our mommies, daddies, and guardians tier, we have Mary and Kai. And then at our gods, goddesses, and deities tier, we have Gods and Punks and Agent Ness. Like the video if you liked it, or rather smash that like button, since I think that's the trigger to make the button light up on your screen. I don't know, let me know if it happened. Hit that subscribe while you're at it. It really helps out the channel. And if you do, you'll eventually get to see my movie of a video on Flatland, a romance of many dimensions whenever it comes out. I hope you have an absolutely scrabdangulous day. I love you. Bye bye.